So seventh grade, it's the first year in junior high. I was about 12 years old. And it's a really weird age because it's kind of like this transitional age, because on the one hand, you have kids, and I'm thinking mostly of boys, who are starting to become teenagers. Their bodies are developing, so they're interested in stuff like going to dances, kissing girls, things like that. And then on the other hand, you have the other kids who are still like these little kids who are still into things like candy and toys. And so I was definitely in the little kid camp. I was about 87 pounds, maybe just under 5 feet. I still collected baseball cards, which kind of tells you everything you need to know about my development at that point. And I knew absolutely nothing about romantic love. I mean, my one frame of reference was this episode of Batman, the old TV series, where Batman falls in love with Jill St. John. Some of you may remember this. And it's kind of this forbidden love because she works for the Riddler, so that's kind of a problem. And she sneaks into the Batcave and finds out his identity, so of course she has to die, and she falls into the Batmobile's atomic pile, and she goes up in this ball of flame. It's like whoosh. And Batman feels really bad because he was in love with her. And me watching this as a little kid, I felt bad too. It kind of touched my heart. So there was this kid in my 7th grade named Michael Sanders, and he was definitely in the other camp. He was more developed. And I knew him in 6th grade, but in 7th grade, basically he was in this different world. It's kind of like these two parallel universes, and there's very little transit between those two worlds. So I had no contact with him whatsoever. So one day in 3rd period math class, he comes up to me after class, and it's the first time he's talked to me all year. And he says, do you know Ruth Lowenstein? And I said, yeah, I know. And I knew who she was. I didn't know her very well, and she was actually one of the prettiest girls in the class. More developed. And he said, "Well, isn't she in your 5th period science class?" And I said, "Yeah, she is." And I was kind of surprised that he knew that. And he gives me this piece of paper that's all folded up, and he says, "I want you to give her this." And he told me 3 things: don't lose it, tell her who it's from, and don't read it. So I take the note, and I'd like to say that I had this moral dilemma of whether I should breach their privacy or not, but it wasn't a moral dilemma at all, because first of all, I was resentful that I'm like his messenger boy, so of course I'm going to read it. And second of all, it was this rare glimpse I could have into this other world, of how boys and girls. I knew nothing about it, so it was kind of this fascinating thing for me. So I go away, and where nobody can see me, and I'm gonna unfold the note and read it, and I'm thinking, what could this note possibly say? What's this secret code between boys and girls? I was like, I can't wait to read this. I had all this anticipation. So I open it up, and it says, "Hi." That's it, hi. And I'm thinking, that hi? I mean, that's it. I thought, I could write such a better note. I could talk about my geography teacher. He was this guy with like a flat top haircut, and he kind of looked like Fred Flintstone, and this note would just be so hilarious. And so I go into the science class where she is, and she's sitting there with a friend of hers, and I go up to her, and she looks at me like, as if to say, what could you possibly want with me? And I tell her, I'm kind of nervous, I'm like, this is what it feels like to approach this girl, even though it's not even on my behalf. And I tell her in this nervous, kind of shaky voice, I have this note for you from Michael Sanders. And she's like, oh. And I give it to her, and I'm thinking, wait till she reads this note. I mean, she's going to be like, what the fuck? I mean, this is so lame. And then she reads it, and she squeals with delight. And she shows it to her friend, and her friend squeals in delight. And then suddenly, she's like really nice to me. And she's like, okay, after class, I'm going to give you a note for you, and I want you to give it to Michael. So I say, okay. So after class, she gives me this note, and she also tells me not to read it. And of course, I take it aside, and out of eye shot or whatever, I look at it, and it says, "Hi!" exclamation point. And there's a little heart, where the dot is. And I'm like, okay. So I take the note, and after school, I see Michael Sanders. He's with some friends of his, and I go up to him, and they're kind of smirking, and he looks really embarrassed. And I say, "Oh, I have this note for you." And he just takes it, and he says, "Okay, from now on, just slide it in my locker. Don't give it to me." And I say, "Okay." And I'm wondering, well, why don't they do this? I mean, what do they need me for? But this is the system they set up, so okay, I'm going to go with it. So the next day, after math class, he doesn't even say anything to me. He just walks by and puts a note in my math book. So that's like this delivery system now, like a Russian spy or something. So I go away, I open the note, and it says, "I like you." So I give her the note, and she gives me a note back, and it says, "I like you too." And I'm thinking, okay, so this is like the level of discourse here. It's not super interesting. And so over the next week, there's notes back and forth, "You're cute too," stuff like that. And so finally on a Friday, I get this note from him, and I give it to her. I read it, and it says, "Will you go to the dance with me?" And there's 2 boxes, yes and no. And the dance is a week from the next Saturday, so it's Friday, a week from the next day. So I give it to her, I get the note back, and she checks the yes box and puts a bunch of exclamation points after the yes. So the next Monday, after the weekend, I get another note from him. Oh, I'm sorry, no, he's out sick. So I get a note from her that says, "I bought a new dress for the dance." And so I put it in his locker. The next day I get a note from him, and he says in the note, "I can't take you to the dance." That's it, no explanation or anything. So I give it to her, and she's understandably upset. And she starts giving me a series of notes, over the next few days, saying things like, "Why? What happened? Don't you like me?" Stuff like that. And I'm sliding all these in his locker, and there's radio silence from him. There's no notes from him, and he won't even look at me. And I am sort of imagining these notes accumulating, piling up in his locker, and I'm thinking, is he embarrassed when he reads these notes? Does he even read these notes? It's just, I just can't imagine what's going on. And so she seems to be, getting more and more distraught. And, I had this image in my mind of, Jill St. John falling in the Batmobile's atomic pile and the whoosh and everything. But, it's not like I could say anything to her, because first of all, I wasn't supposed to know what was going on, because we're sort of maintaining this fiction that I'm not reading the notes. And second of all, I'm just this little kid. What am I going to say? I don't know anything about this stuff. So the week goes by, and finally, on Friday, after this series of notes that she had been giving me to him, he walks by me after math class, and he slips a note in my book. And I'm thinking, oh man, this is going to be really good. I wonder what he's going to say. And I figure this is really going up to the next level. I can't wait to read this note. It's almost like a soap opera that I'm sort of following. And so I go off, and when no one's looking, I open my math book, and the note is stapled shut. And I couldn't open it without being detected. And I give it to her, and that was the last note I ever passed. And so I never found out if they went to the dance together. Did he go with somebody else? Did he not go at all? I just never knew, and would never know, because I was not of that world. And that portal I had between those two worlds was now suddenly shut off. And so I decided that for now, maybe being a little kid and collecting baseball cards was not so bad after all. Thank you.